Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, we're going to take a view of radio network engineering. Mitch Glider is the engineering supervisor at CBS Radio Networks in New York. This is the big time. And they had to work all through COVID, and they have to work with hundreds and hundreds of affiliates all over satellite with commercial splits, and it's complicated, but Mitch is going to demystify a lot of it for us. Coming up next on TWiRT. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Air, featuring Playout One radio automation software, comprehensive streaming solutions, website content management, and social media tools for maximum listener engagement on the web at AIIR.com. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts. Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to the light bulb at the top of the tower. I'm Kirk Harnack, your host. I'm back in my normal office. I'm back in the Telos Alliance Nashville office, where I'm very thankful to my employer, Telos Alliance, for giving me a couple hours on Thursdays to bring you some interesting news and commentary and tech information from the world of radio broadcast engineering. It is a cold winter day here in Nashville, as you might expect. For the last 2 weeks, I was away. I was in Spain visiting my wife's family there and meeting for the first time 3 grandchildren I married into the family. So 3 new grandkids over in Spain. Luckily, everybody there speaks enough Spanish, enough English that I didn't go hungry. We had good food the whole time and saw a lot of really interesting things. It was a great trip. Although it was late at night, like 11 p.m. for me to do the show for the past 2 Thursdays. Thankfully, Chris Tarr was along to get us started in a Back to Basics series. All right, enough about the shows past. We're here to talk about today's show, and I am delighted to introduce to you, if you haven't met him already, a fellow by the name of Mitch Glider. Mitch is an amazing engineer, quite a good guy, and I met him years ago. And I'll let Mitch tell you about, maybe Mitch doesn't remember. Mitch, welcome in. It's good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I do remember that trip. There was you sent me a nice picture, and that was in the rack room that was then an IDC head end. That's when Westwood One and CBS were still married, and we had just installed our IDC head end, which we have a nice picture of you there with our 100 or so codecs behind us. So yes, it's been a while, but
yeah, let's see if Suncast can pop that picture up. I provided Suncast. I was kind of late doing so, Suncast. I don't know if you've seen the email yet. Okay, there's one of the pictures from it. This is the backside of a bunch of Telos Zephyr Extremes, which I think you were using as encoders to go up on satellite.
That's correct. At the time when IDC was distributing really one of their first completely IP-based satellite encoding systems, this was the encoder that they chose. They had some custom firmware on it, so it wouldn't work as an ISDN, but it worked as an excellent audio encoder. And we actually had 100 of them in that rack room to broadcast 68 channels because we had an MN backup system. But yes, that was quite a while ago. We no longer have that head end, and Westwood One and CBS are no longer married. But it was a great shot for you guys to see all of those codecs in one position. So it was
so many things in business happen because of handshake agreements. And well, first of all, tell me, what are I see all the Telos Zephyr Extremes. Those are the 2 rack unit boxes with the bright display. But what are the 1 rack unit boxes between them?
That is the interface. In other words, that is how the information, in other words, the audio came in to the Telos codecs, and then via what would be the live wire jack by label would then go into those I actually forget the name of what they were called, but that that was the interface between the
Okay.
codecs and the actual MUX itself. It was all
Ah,
IP. So
yeah.
each Telos encoder had to have one of these units. And I do apologize. It's been a long time. I forget there is a name for them, and Diana and all the wonderful people at IDC are going to be like, come on, Mitch. But this was a great system. It was one of the first systems for radio at the time, not the only, but one of the first to do regional commercialization or copy split, as we would speak.
So it turns out, I just looked up the information on this picture. I visited you on September 13th. I'm sorry, September. Let me see what it was. It was in 2013, September 24th of 2013. So this has been over 11 years ago when that system was up and running.
Yeah, and it ran for a while, and then through various mergers and and things like that have happened in our business, it turns out that we ended up married to Cumulus, right? In a weird way.
That's right.
And
yeah.
And as you know, they had no longer, unfortunately, an amazing XDS head end up in the Purchase, New York area.
Yeah.
It was an amazing facility. Brian Gay set that up. Brian Wilson, who is another story that we really should touch on before we get off. He was involved in that along with Bob Mack and all those people. So to make a long Mitch story short, it was decided that we would move the head end, move our uplink, transmissions to Purchase, New York. And that was an interesting transition because the way they did it is they installed an Axia system at the right in that rack room and put I forget the name of the 8-port codecs that you guys make, but they put a bunch of those in, and that was the transmission path from the broadcast center up to Purchase, New York. So they installed a little Axia system, and Brian Wilson set that up, and that's how that transition was made, both for relays and stuff like that. So the ID system was turned down, and the Purchase system ran wonderfully. And then eventually, Westwood One and CBS divorced, for lack of a better term. Just it was a 20-year relationship, and it just ran its course. So when that relationship ended, they decided to start using Skyview out of Phoenix as our uplink facility. So then we needed to transition once again from the New York City Broadcast Center right now to Skyview in Phoenix. So the way we decided to do that was to use just bricks, just use Comrex bricks. And I actually wasn't present when that transition was happening, but I know the history. So essentially, we used 5 bricks at the broadcast center and 5 bricks at Skyview, and we used their, for lack of a better term, cross-lock technology, right?
Sure.
So we were using MPLS and then internet on both sides. That became too expensive. So to fast forward, that's how we do it now. We have 5 Comrex bricks here in New York, and they connect 5 out at Skyview. Now, down in DC, which is our backup facility, right, we have 5 more bricks, and there's 5 out there. And we just have a very unique routing system here where we can put any local studio to any one of those paths, and Skyview acts as the traffic cop, if you know what I mean. Like, we will put our hourly out of Studio A in New York across a path, and we'll call up Skyview and we'll say, hey, the hourly is on 36A, and do you hear it? And they put it up to their encoder. So they kind of act as our master control. Years ago, we did all that locally. So
right.
I know you wanted to kind of get into that, and that's kind of how we morphed into this, is that you just got to picture 10 bricks, 5 in DC, 5 to Skyview, and in New York, 5 and 5. And that is our basic way that we are transmitting. If there is an anchor in DC, for example, that is doing the hourlies, top and bottoms, he selects his studio to the correct transmission path, and he calls Skyview and says, use this path. Same thing for New York, et cetera, et cetera. So that is, I hope that makes sense. That is kind of our basic air chain. And there's more to it if you want to get into it. There's
actually, I had some follow-up question to
sure,
ask
go right
later
ahead.
on, but right now we're this is just kind of the opening introduction. Mitch Glider has so much more to tell us, and if you've ever wondered, engineering friends, about how things work at the network radio or the radio network level. Mitch is going to demystify some of that for us. Tell us about some of the equipment that they use. He's already let us in on some of that, and a little bit of the history as to how things kind of got around there. I'm also interested in learning about how they do commercial splits. That's a technology that most people are offering these days, so that commercial advertisers can be formatted or can be only put in markets where they maybe have an outlet. Like if you're, I don't know, National Tire and Battery or something like that, your spots will run only in cities. You only pay for cities that way you've got a store. Things like that. That's all coming up, and the skill sets that engineers these days, because Mitch is involved with hiring people from time to time, getting engineers interviewed, and he's going to tell us about what's needed in terms of skill set. I'm Kirk Harnack. It's This Week in Radio Tech, and for the last couple of weeks, I've mentioned that we've got a new advertiser, and we're going to be doing some ads, 1-minute ads with Dave Brierley Jones, fascinating guy who knows all about this stuff. But the advertiser is a company called AIR. It's AIIR. Yep, because the internet, they wanted their own domain. So AIIR, but it does describe they're involved with on-air stuff. And we have a look here at their website. You can go to their website. It's AIIR.com. And the product that I'm most familiar with would be Playout One. And that's what most people know about, is radio automation software that just works for everybody. And all of my radio stations, and this, I'm going to make some personal endorsements here for some of these products, because I reached out to AIR when we had a slot open up for advertising. And I said, Dave, you know how you wanted to advertise? Well, there's a slot open now, and I love your product. We use Playout One at all of our stations, which I think is 21 stations now that we're up to. And we just love Playout One. It works great for us, especially, well, it's hard to pick one thing that's really is outstanding, but one of them is WebVT. WebVT allows voice trackers to easily, and I mean super easily, from their homes or some other studio or in the building or outside the building, to do their voice tracking and do it totally with context, right? To do it totally with the audio that came before and the audio that's coming up after. But AIR also does streaming. They also handle content management for your website, for your radio website, and also they do apps for your online streaming. Plus, there's more things that they do, too. We're going to get into that as we talk to Dave Brierley Jones coming up on future dates. But I want to make you aware of the website. You can go there, AIIR.com, and check out the products that they make, that they offer for you. Also, I got to say, we love their financial model for Playout One. It just really works out well for us, for lots of small and medium market broadcasters. Believe me, it'd work well for big broadcasters as well, big city broadcasters, and their reliability is just amazing with the different systems that they offer and the backup systems that they offer. We love it. Thanks a lot, AIR, AIIR, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. All right, it's Kirk Harnack, and Mitch Glider is my guest today. By the way, Chris Tarr has the day off. He is working hard, putting in another transmitter or something like that. All right, Mitch. We didn't get around. What's your title there, Mitch? Engineering supervisor? Something like that?
Yeah, I'm the engineering supervisor. When I met you last, I had actually kind of transitioned out of technician in this building to management. And that was a great experience for me. Some different challenges, but it taught me a lot. And then, I left, as I mentioned, for a while. When I came back, that position was kind of eliminated. So we're just kind of I still really honestly do all the same things that I did when I was a manager, but I'm a technician, so I have regular hours, but I still get an opportunity to drive new technologies and to, kind of look forward and have the institutional knowledge, from being here a long time. So it really works out well. But that I am, this is a union shop here, and so I am an IBW 1212 technician, and most proud of it and most happy to be here.
So tell me about what you guys do at a network is not so different than what we do in live radio. You've got in TV they call them a hit. You've got live hits at least twice an hour, top of the hour, bottom of the hour.
Right.
Tell me about the broadcast schedule.
So we do a top of the hour schedule that with commercials is 6 minutes at the top, and then at the bottom we do a 1 minute. At 31, we do a 1 minute, but there's also what they call specials at the 20s and 50s that are 1 minute long. And, those are really popular for a lot of our affiliates, especially with really hot breaking news. They can kind of take them arbitrarily. They don't have to take them all. But we have a really good voice cue communication system, and all of our affiliates are well aware of the things coming down the line. So it's at least 2 broadcasts every hour, 24 hours a day, 7-day, 365. So those are a lot. That's a lot of broadcasts to go live, as you can imagine.
How do you handle on those top and bottom of the hour? Are those always live with a live anchor?
Yes, CBS News Radio never pre-records our top and bottoms. It is always a live anchor. Now we play actualities, of course, like everybody. Like, this one said, and we play a cart, but to answer your question, nothing is pre-recorded. Everything is live.
Interesting. So how do the anchors, how do they get cued? Like, start talking now and stop talking now. How does that happen?
Right. Well, it's a combination of, there's a set clock, right? And also they get a cue in their ear. In other words, if you're familiar with the product, they get the bong at the top of the hour. This is CBS News, brought to you by so-and-so. Then they know they have to start talking, right? And then they know that they have to talk up to their first post, which is 2 minutes and 50 seconds. And these are professional network level people. And I'm just going to say 99% of the time, give or take, they go, this is CBS. And then the commercial comes in, and then they hear the end of the commercial, and they come back in, and they have another post to hit at 5 minutes, and they hit that, and then another. So, it's amazing how good these and how talented these engineers are. They go by an NTP based clock that's on our software. We use Jutel. It's a Finnish company, kind of what, same thing that your sponsor does, but, that's our record and playback and cart system. So we have a clock that's NTP based, and that's whether they're here or at home, right? And they go by the clock, and they know they have to hit their posts, and they're professional.
Is it that same software that handles actualities and packages that they play back?
Yes. It's all one big package. In other words, whether they want to roll on something and record it, edit it, and then create. We still call them carts from back in the day, but it's it's a square box that you hit. It plays, it plays something. Usually 10 or 15 seconds or whatever. So you can call them an actuality, you can call them a cart, whatever you want, but it's all one. The Jutel system is all one. It's how we record, it's how we edit, and then it's how we set up our cart walls, right, to play. And it's a great system, and we've been using them for a long time. And I would say that, we can get into it when you want, but we helped develop their cloud system. That we needed to develop, like everybody, during COVID. In other words, we needed a way to get on the air that was cloud-based, that did not involve New York or Washington from an audio routing point of view. We still needed the back end. We still needed the back end from a server point of view. So we developed that system, and they call it Radio Man 6 Cloud. And it's very interesting because it's all cloud-based and Chrome-based on the client side. Essentially, it's all WebRTC up to the cloud, and we're using 2WCOM, the German company. We're using their codecs versus their virtual codecs, which is called Moin, which lives in the cloud. And then we have physical hardware at in various locations where we need to not only send audio but receive audio. So if you could picture at Skyview as an example, a 2WCOM decoder, right, that goes into their Wheatstone router the same way our bricks do. So if we call them up and we say, hey, we're not on a brick source 36A or whatever whatever you want to call it. We're on the S source from the cloud. The reason why we call it S is because the transport technology is SRT. So if you could picture it,
Yeah.
so if you could picture it, somebody's at home, they have a browser, they have a Rode Podcaster Pro, console like everybody used for $500 and still do. And essentially it was a virtual console, and they would hear, we had a playlist running so that would simulate that same return that I told you about for timing. Dong, this is CBS. So they'd hear that in their ear. They would talk. It would get decoded at Skyview. It would go into their router, and they would treat that source as if it was coming from the broadcast center in DC. So that's how the network was able to broadcast all those broadcasts, top and bottom, all the time, without losing a beat. It was a rush, but we got it done, and now we use it almost 40% of our broadcast. By design, we are a full-time hybrid network, which means we have beautiful studios here at the broadcast center, but we also have 17 home studios for the anchors, plus all the producers and other support people like tape editors and stuff like that. So we have a tremendous amount of home setups at this point. And, listen, I think, in my opinion, it took a while to make some acoustical adjustments where needed. But if you were to listen to our hourlies, I don't think anybody would really say, like it was in the beginning of COVID, hey, you sound like you're in your living room, or hey, you sound like you're in the bathroom, because they were. You know what I'm saying? We've made adjustments where people's home studios are where necessary. So when they're at home, they're using that cloud-based SRT 2WCOM Jutel technology, and when they're on the broadcast center or they're at DC, they are using standard SAS routing to bricks, to Skyview and everything like that. So it's really not that different. Now, one thing I did want to touch on, because I know you were kind of talking about this, and I had to learn this too, that, most people know that we provide the content to other radio stations, so we have a little bit of a different responsibility. We have to maintain a high level of audio quality and audio levels that are consistent. And now there's an editorial side, which has nothing to do with me, but we have to maintain that as well. But that is not my lane. My lane is to make sure, along with the rest of my team, which we have, and I could not do this alone, we have some really talented people, that it gets delivered at the proper level, with consistency and stuff like that. So that is really our world. Either we're broadcasting from the facilities or we're broadcasting at home via the cloud. Another interesting thing I will tell you is that we also provide content to Sirius XM. And an interesting thing that we do there, just to talk about SRT, is we have an encoder at Skyview, right? So anything that we send to their encoders that would go out terrestrially and be on a receiver, we grab a Wheatstone output and we put that into our encoder, and that goes back to our MOIN and it gets decoded and then sent over to Sirius XM using bare metal 2WCOM. So we are populating the internet along with thousands and millions of other, with quite a bit of 2WCOM SRT streams. And I will tell you that when I say how reliable they are that is a great company, and they're German based, but they're just excellent people to work with. Their hardware is great. They're not ridiculously expensive, and I just want to give a shout out to the 2WCOM people, because they do a good job. So that is. Go right ahead.
No, I'm glad you mentioned them. 2WCOM is one of the companies that, like my employer, TELUS Alliance, and also like Sound 4, is producing broadcast products in containerized software form that run as Docker containers. And, most broadcast engineers are not familiar with this. I'm barely familiar with this technology.
I just had a conversation. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I literally
go ahead.
I just had a conversation with Life, who's one of the, he might even be the CTO. And he explained to me that, we need to do a firmware upgrade, and it would mean literally losing all of our spigots of our 8x8 codec. But they're using container technology. He explained it to me, and I started researching container technology. So I'm just learning about it. I'm completely familiar with virtual environments, right, where you're spinning up individual servers, right? But I'm starting to learn the pros and cons, and there are pros and cons. But that's for another conversation. But I would just say that our Moin services that live in Jutel's cloud is a container, right? And it's an 8x8 encode decode product. It can be expanded. Right. That's what you have to picture. In the Jutel environment for us, we have 8 encoders and we have 8 decoders. And they can be SRT, they can be RTP, and then internally, right, they communicate with the Jutel head end, right? Because they have what they call media nodes, which are just audio playout units. So it's really just virtual and the way all of us broadcasters are familiar with now. Within that cloud environment, the Jutel environment is communicating with via various URLs and various streams. And it really just runs itself. I mean, we do have to keep an eye on it. It's because it's a key part of what we do. My coworker sitting right behind me, Sarah Fishman, that's one of her jobs, is to just really understand how that all works, keep an eye on it, look at the jitter, make sure there's nothing that's going to happen that could cause our end game product to have a problem. And my last comment about this Moin is they just recently, with this new update, enabled SNMP, which means now if there's a problem and my management says, hey, SiriusXM's not getting so-and-so, or the S source out at Skyview, I can then look and see, it's not a Jutel problem. This is a Moin problem. The Moin shut down, or a stream got disconnected, or it could have been just an internet problem or whatever. Yeah. The bottom line is that's going to shorten the troubleshooting time. So that is really the story of the broadcasting. I did want to touch on something that I know you wanted to talk about, which is copy split or geographically unique commercials.
Well, tell you what, let's hold that over through our commercial break. We're going to split everybody for a commercial. And there's a lot to talk about here. We're talking to Mitch Glider. He's the engineering supervisor at CBS Radio Networks. And I've known Mitch for a long time. So it's good to reconnect with Mitch and hear about these things, because so many radio stations, most of us have a station that depends on hourly news, or more frequently, sometimes long form programming if something big, something bad happens. And certainly CBS is had a tradition of being on top of things like that, with both breaking news and long form news and top and bottom of the hour. So we're going to come back to that in just a minute. Our show is brought to you in part by some really good folks over in England, and they sell their software worldwide. And you and me, as engineers, we look like heroes when we show our talent what they can do and not work any harder. All the extra content that they can produce, especially for social media and for putting reporters or callers and things like this on the air. It's Broadcast Bionics. We'll be right back after this.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter and display all platforms in one place and post text, images and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
From Broadcast Bionics, the Bionic Studio, and so many other great products. Man, I was just visiting radio stations and I see their studio clock from Voci Software, which is related. And at my employer, Telos Alliance, we ourselves use products designed and made by Broadcast Bionics. Thanks a lot, Dan McQuillan and everyone at Broadcast Bionics for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. Chris Tarr has the day off, at least from us. He's working hard somewhere. And Mitch Glider is our guest. Mitch is the engineering supervisor at CBS Radio Networks. So, Mitch, you are right in the thick of things there. What, on West 57th in New York City? Is that where you are?
Yeah, we're at 57th and 10th, which is just a little bit not too far from Columbus Circle, for those to give a reference. So it's a great location, and the building is a square block. It is between 56th and 57th and 10th and 11th. And, it's one of those buildings where if you're on the third floor and you walk through a door, you're on the second floor. So it's a big building. And when people start here for the first time, we have a new employee, Jack Horowitz, who started here about 14 months ago. And we used to joke that, first you have to know where all the bathrooms are and where the cafeteria is. And then from there you take it, it's a big building, but yes, but I enjoy it. I live in, not too far out on a suburb of New York called Long Island in the town of Merrick. So I am about an hour and a half door to door in both directions, which is not that bad.
Oh, wow.
So, and I enjoy it. I get the privilege of working from home on Fridays. So I'm a commuter, so I listen to my audiobooks and listen to my music, and as long as I get a seat, it's all good. And like I said, I've been doing this since August of 1998. But what would you like to discuss next, my friend?
Oh, yeah. Well, about splits. So one of the things, that networks, and lots of networks do this, but they offer I'm sure that somebody in the upper C-suite said, we need to be able to geographically offer our advertisers, where their spots are going to play. And and so to do that, I guess you have to address satellite receivers or something. Tell me about this technology that allows it to happen.
I know a bit about this, and I can tell you that when we installed that IDC system, Conrad Troutman, who was the CTO at the time, I worked directly with him, and we were looking at a couple of different systems. There was then brand new XDS system, which had the DNA going back to the Star Guide system for those who go back that far. And ultimately, the way it works, the best way to put it is, hey, we want to sell snow blowers on the East Coast and lawnmowers on the West Coast, right? And now you had mentioned before that they can get very finite, maybe even down to the market, but I don't think they do that because, for instance, Skyview has an XDS head-end system, and I can tell you that our commercials are absolutely market and geographically diverse. How much, that is really not my lane, but I can tell you I know enough about the technology to know that the commercials are all edge played, which means that the commercials for every single one of our affiliates already live on a hard drive on the XDS receiver. So
Yeah.
as our clock goes, and we're talking, and then one of our anchors, like Debbie Rodriguez, will say, and this is CBS. At that exact moment, at 2 minutes and 50 seconds, a signal is sent out to all the receivers all over the country. And in a millisecond or two, the commercial that's supposed to play in that market plays. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. Everything is loaded. I believe that they're constantly using a bit of the bandwidth of the satellite distribution and then subsequent downlink to constantly update and load on the commercials onto the receivers. And then they play out of the receivers. Now, it is true, and in most cases, even in our network, that not all radio stations play our network commercials during the broadcast. They have agreements individually, depending on what deal you cut with our affiliate salespeople, that they say, okay, you want to play your inventory or your commercials during our broadcast? Okay, you have to play our network commercials within a day part that is suitable to the advertiser. In other words, Geico expects them to be played, let's say at 1:03 in the afternoon. You can't throw that commercial on the overnight, So I don't really know the nuts and bolts. I'm just trying to give everybody the basic idea. Is now some radio stations, especially some of the smaller markets, they just play the commercials edge play live. And the other thing that's interesting is that Skyview always puts a commercial live out from the head end in the event that something happens with the edge play, so that there's no dead air. So you understand what I mean, Kirk, right? So even though all the commercials are supposed to play out of the receiver, as we know, stuff happens, right? So I found that very interesting. And we used to do it also here when we were the head end for the network, and we were running, at that point, the Harris automation system. We used the term, we would always cover. We'd always play a generic commercial. So in the event that there was an edge play issue, that would be. Now, also, we do put relays out for these radio stations, because if you, for instance, don't want to play our commercials and you've made an agreement to play them in another day part, you don't have anybody sitting at that board. You need a closure from the network that says local avail, right? Start. So we provide all those services. It's via Skyview, because they're the head end, as we've discussed before. We provide them with all the content, and they run the clock. They run an automation clock out there that has a specific time when our live content should be there, and a specific time when the commercials should be there, and therefore the relays have to follow. That's why we are really fortunate to have true professionals that can hit their posts and watch the clock. There was a time where the commercials were advanced manually by a press of a button. Here at the broadcast center, we used to use the term next event, right? But for a lot of reasons, mostly because of COVID and that we were working in the cloud and working from home, we had to abandon that next event. And all of our anchors, every single one of them, had to get away from having that. They didn't have to worry about hitting their posts so close, because they just hit the next event button. But now that's all changed the last 6 years. Now they have to go by the clock. They have to time out. They have to be more careful about the writing and the content. And there are producers who can talk in their ear, kind of give them a little, like the same way the sports guys get. They get little things in the ear, move it along or lock it out, or you're running short or you're running long. And these people, they just do it. So it's very interesting. That's how you have to picture. Skyview has this clock where they're playing commercials or they're sending relays. and they're expecting live content. Now, if that long content goes too long, unfortunately, it gets cut off.
It gets,
But I can tell
yeah,
you, I can tell you
yeah.
that again, we have some really good people here. Now, it does happen, not always their fault. Sometimes there could be a clock issue or an MTP issue or the case like that. But I can tell you, we're real proud of our anchors. They had to learn a lot of different skill sets. They all had to become little mini engineers. I can't tell you. Mostly Jack Harwitz and Sarah Fishman handle speaking with our anchors. The remote, it could be any kind of problem from we don't like their levels or they're missing their posts or there's some distortion. There's a lot of things that we listen for and we correct before the affiliate complains. We don't wait
Yeah.
until an affiliate, whether it's WTOP, which is obviously one of our highest rated stations, or some smaller station in a smaller market. We try to maintain that, and that's how we do it. Yeah, right ahead.
Like WNIX in Greenville, Mississippi. That's my station, and we're CBS affiliates there. So
right,
yeah.
So
yeah,
well, you are completely familiar that what levels you expect from us, and yes, we run a hot network. We don't peak at -20. We average at -20 dBFS, and that's by design. And Sarah and Jack kind of keep an eye on that. Everything from the way we set them up at home, the way that we calibrate and teach them to ride, things here in the studio where we have SAS consoles. So we're as a network, we feel very, very responsible about levels and consistency. We've implemented LUF processing for our actualities because as you know, over the years, remember, like a lot of those carts wouldn't always be the same level and could be a little annoying, right? So we've implemented a LUFS target that keeps our cart walls more in line with the quality control that we're looking for. And again, for all you CBS affiliates out there, we run that -20 dBFS or zero analog average. We do that by design. We just it's not distorted by any chance, but it's just the level we choose. And another reason why we do that is because we have to match the edge play levels of the commercials. In other words, we don't have control of that, right? So even if, let's say, we decided that we didn't want to run the network that high and we wanted to run it at minus, then we'd have to change the whole gain structure at Skyview, because at the end of the day, Skyview is adjusted with their Wheatstone adjustments, where they expect us to be an average of -20, peaking up to let's say -6 or something like that. So they've made their adjustments on their encoding equipment so that when the edge plate commercials come out with our level, it sounds professional.
I must say, as an affiliate, I've never noticed level problems with CBS networks between the edge play and the announcers during COVID. Like you mentioned, a couple of them at first sounded like they were in the kitchen, but you guys got that corrected. That's great. I got a question about what engineers as old as me or you, we've probably called net cues. And, back in the day, these were audible or barely audible or subaudible or kind of super audible. In-band. Thank you. And we're all familiar with the mute alert, beep-doop, and then CBS had their own system, which sounded like little high frequency tones to me. And then at some point you guys quit using that. I imagine when, digital satellite delivery came along and there were no, but so tell me about net cues.
Well, net cues were in band, and the purpose was for the same reason, so that stations had an opportunity to cut away and rejoin, right? So, the in-band stuff started with net cues, and then Westwood One had their own version of it that we were using for a while. Keith Angstad had a box that he developed and a system that we used for a long time. And shout out to Keith Angstad if anybody knows him. He's a pioneer in the radio industry. But anyway, of course, once we got into this IP-based modulating distribution system, a la XDS, a la IDC, now that is all IP-based and is all just WebSockets being transmitted. It's not in band at all. So I would lie if I would tell you that I know that like the exact technology of how the encoding happens, but I do know that when the XDS system gets a relay, it jumps on the audio packet truncate that so the timing is exact. You know what I'm saying? They don't have a separate data stream like some of the older systems did. And the problem with that is that you need the relays to line up in time as close as you can. So again, I would not even pretend to be an XDS pro, and that would be something that a guy like who's recently retired that worked for us, or a guy like Brian Wilson, would really know the under the hood stuff about that. But I can tell you that it's very accurate. We also used subaudibles for a long time, which was kind of a better but not great way of doing things. It didn't really matter in news until we started going on FM stations where the frequency response was down a little lower. We did use subaudibles in a lot of our sporting events, and then also, there was a time where we were also communicating with the Denver Westwood One / Cumulus plant, where they had an uplink also for the Wegener system. So things were very complicated around here for a long time. We were using subaudibles. We were using the Bidoops and the Westwood One things, and it added another real layer of work because you needed to be able to either. I never liked running the audio through these encoders, but sometimes you had to. But then we started getting involved with distribution amplifiers. I'm just happy to say that the time of in-band queuing is long gone from a network point of view and in general.
I hear you. Hey, it's Kirk Harnack. I'm talking to Mitch Glider. Mitch, when we come back from this commercial break, and sorry, I got to squeeze two of them close together here because we've talked for a long time at the first half of the show. I'm interested in more of the things that we had planned to talk about, but I want to make sure before the show's over, we talk about the future of satellite distribution versus terrestrial distribution. We're starting to see a few shows that are distributed in, almost in real time, but of course, a little bit of buffering delay. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that. If I know if you got plans you can't give away, I understand that, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that coming up. It's Kirk Harnack, This Week in Radio Tech. Mitch Glider, the engineering supervisor for CBS Radio Networks, is with us. And our show is brought to you in part by Angry Audio. Hey, just 2 hours ago, I was sitting in Mike Dosh's office at Angry Audio in Franklin, Tennessee, and we were talking about some technology and some new things that he's got coming out. But the Rave console is absolutely worth your attention. It's a little analog console, and just because it's little doesn't mean there's anything cheap feeling about it. This is a heavy duty little console. It's got 8 faders, and it has 4 mic line inputs, some line inputs as well. It's got, of course, a mix minus bus. It's got 2 buses. It's got program audition kind of buses, as well as that telco bus. And it's kind of cool. The monitor fader and the headphone fader, those are linear faders also, like the source faders are. This thing is really built. You can see on the back there, it uses the Studio Hub standard for quickly and easily connecting your sources and your outputs, and of course uses XLR connectors for your microphone inputs. This console is just absolutely the cat's meow. Really well built. It is heavy. It feels heavy. It feels good on your console and good when you're gliding your hands over it using it. In other words, you can use this console without having to really look at it. You know where everything is. The audio specs are absolutely top notch. They are just knock it out of the park here with this Rave radio mixer. Check it out. It's available from any broadcast dealer that carries Angry Audio, and that's just about all of them. AngryAudio.com is the website that you want to check it out on. It's the Rave Audio Console, now shipping. It's been shipping for a while, so check it out. This Week in Radio Tech is also brought to you by Josh Bone, great guy, and his company, Max Connect. And I want to remind you about the U.192. And why do I want to tell you about it? Well, this is the little box that you need to have if you are using a software FM audio processor like the Stereo Tool processor or Omnia SST or the Breakaway One processor. You run these on a computer, but the problem is computers don't have a BNC connector for an output. They may have a sound card, but I got to tell you, even the sound cards are just not really qualified to put out the fragile and precise audio output that MPX, FM multiplex, otherwise known as composite, that it really needs. That is, you can read articles about the multiplex signal, the composite signal. This needs to be precise because this is what is modulating your FM transmitter. It's way more than just audio. It's way more than just left and right audio. This needs to be ruler flat frequency response and phase response, at least up into the 60, 70 kilohertz area. And that's what this box from Max Connect is, the U.192 USB interface. That's what this is designed to do. And it does it really, really well. It's the only sound interface that was actually designed to do this. So if you're going to do your own processor in software and you need a multiplex output to feed a local FM transmitter or maybe a 950 megahertz composite STL, this is the thing to use. Now, by the way, it's actually built by the folks at Angry Audio. It was designed as a cooperation between Max Connect and Angry Audio, and it's sold under the Max Connect banner. This is a very, very useful tool, and this will make your software FM audio processor sound great and be perfectly interfaced to your transmitter or your analog 950 STL. Check it out. It's at Max Connect. I know it's spelled funny because, the internet. MaxConnect.com, the U.192. Thanks a lot, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack. We're talking to Mitch Glider, the engineering supervisor at CBS Radio Networks. And Mitch, what were we going to talk about next? My mind's gone blank here.
We were going to talk about the alternatives to satellite distribution.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So satellite's been around a long time. Back in the beginning of my radio career, well, almost the beginning, I was the general manager at WKXO in Berea, Kentucky, and we were a mutual affiliate. And a crew came by, hired by Mutual to put in satellite dishes across the country, and we got one. And it was just amazing. In fact, we couldn't put it at the studio. We had to put it at the transmitter site, and Mutual actually paid for the phone line, the audio equalized line from the transmitter to the station. Now, I know it was a small town, but I was fascinated by this technology that let us have Mutual, instead of sounding like over a phone line, he was sound like he was in the studio right next door. So that's where things started. Then later on we put in, other satellite receivers. And tell me about satellite and where you think things are going.
Well, I got to tell you, at least 3 times over the last 6 years, even though I'm not technically, a VP of engineering anymore, my management has come to me and said, what would it look like? Who's out there? Who's doing what? And I can tell you that we talked to 2 companies about it. But it gets really, the technology is there, using the public internet. Yes, it would be unlikely that we'd be able to always hit that 00 timestamp that we were famous for over the years. But I will tell you that is not as important as it used to be. For those who live in the New York area, when 880, which just recently went out off the air, they used to talk a buffer up to the 00, and they'd say at the tone, it's 2:00, and you'd hear bong, and the thing would go. Now, I can tell you that there are still probably some old school news radio stations. And again, this is kind of like not my lane, that would like that. But I would say that that would not be the deal breaker. Hey, we can deliver everything via stream, public internet, but it might not be right at 00. It might be 700 or 500 milliseconds late. Something like that. There's a couple of companies that we spoke to, and I'm proud to plug them. Diane Cantu and IDC, who was our original vendor for the head end that you have that picture. We had they have a product called Mystique that we looked at, and we also talked to the 2WCOM people a lot. Now, the thing that complicates things is you still need to do copy split, right? So it was an easy conversation for us with IDC, because they said basically you would have all the same computers, a production manager and this and a MUX computer and all that, but the difference would be is that you wouldn't have you wouldn't be outputting to an uplink on your roof via the various equipment. It's escaping me all that, the components there, but you'd actually be going into a dedicated internet circuit. And then on the far end, right, they have hardware that can receive the proper commercials and all that. The problem is the scale, in other words, and the costs, right? In order for us to completely go that route, there'd be a big investment on both the front end or the head end here at the broadcast center. We'd need encoders and production managers, and the traffic, meaning the commercials that are sold, would have to be imported, there'd have to be merged. And the problem also is that once upon a time, CBS, when we had our own head end, we had our own traffic department, and we handled all that internally. And now Skyview handles all of that. So, not only would it be a big investment financially, but then every one of our affiliates would have to make the choice. Do they want a dedicated piece of hardware with what we call a gateway built into it, which basically kind of creates kind of like what the Traversal server does for a lot of products, where you don't have to navigate firewall issues. That's the thing. If we had to have meetings with 400 or 600 InfoSec and firewall people, so there are products out there to do it. 2WCOM has it. IDC makes a product. It's just right now, with the environment that network and radio in general is right now, and this is unofficial, I just think that radio executives and accountants say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? We're doing very well with Skyview from a technical point of view, and the distribution. They're an excellent team out there, and they handle a lot of things for us. So I would tell you that the technology is out there for network. I don't see any of the other networks getting away from satellite distribution so quickly either. And, as you know, I used to work for iHeart, so therefore I'm familiar and have friends in the Premier network thing. And there are a couple other radio networks that are regional and not quite as big as ours. And, and I think that, I think if there comes a time where the people that own the satellites say, you know what, we don't even want radio anymore, because we could charge AT&T and Verizon and the government, they'll pay us so much more money for this satellite space. So we're going to just price you out. That hasn't happened yet, although I can tell you that the costs of satellite time and space and transponders is continually going up. So I think I've answered your question. There is technology out there, right? And I don't think the networks that have the scale of affiliates that we do are jumping to invest the millions of dollars, because you got to remember, some of these radio stations, they're not going to pay for, yes, it's true. You could, all of these products say, oh, you could put something on a computer and have a sound card or Dante or whatever, and you could just do it on a PC. Now, some people will be comfortable with that. Some people won't. So, like I said before, there's the cost of the head end and the complexity of getting the commercials imported into that and having the staff to handle that. That's the thing. Skyview handles everything. They handle loading the commercials, the copy splits, and everything like that. In order for CBS Radio Network to get back into that business, our headcount would have to go up tremendously. I think that kind of answers you.
I hear you. Sounds like it's possible. We know that it's technically possible. But it would be a big lift, even though the cost after you do the big lift might very well be lower. And you know what? You're right. If it's not broke, don't fix it. There's nothing wrong with satellite distribution. We've been doing it for probably 40 years now. If I start back in 81 or 2 at WKXO in Berea, Kentucky, I hear you. Hey, Mitch, we're gonna we're running short on time, but I did promise our listeners that you would talk a little bit about skill sets for engineers coming up nowadays. And this is something that you talked to me about. I may have to pause you and go to our last commercial break, but let me start to hear your thoughts about skill sets.
Okay, so as an example, we have 2 engineers, myself and Roger Andrus, that are in our 60s, that have been here 20 or more years. We were around when analog tape was, when we used to have 3 or 4 different routers and 2 different intercom systems, all analog. And you had to solder connectors and make multi-pin connectors and all that kind of stuff, and understand analog and even component level stuff. Now, as time has moved on, obviously there are no more tape, and everything is IT based and broadcast based. So I would say that me and Roger are one of the few people, maybe not few, but we have elevated with that, with the help of some other engineers like Brian Wilson, who came into the fold. We all can sit at the table for network engineering. I'm talking about layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. We are a Dante plant. We all understand the difference between internal and external addresses. We understand padding and natting and coning and ports and UDP and all this kind of stuff that I never thought in a million years. So the skill set for Sarah Fishman was hired 6 years ago, CCNE. She also had some operational experience. Jack Horowitz was hired about 14 months ago, operational experience, a lot of Windows 11 experience. So a modern day radio technician, I don't care if it's network or local, there has to be a blend of understanding audio routing, audio routers, both analog and digital sources, as well as encoding and decoding, jitter, buffering. You have to be able to say, okay, if you increase the buffer, what suffers? Latency. People have to, little things like that. How about audio scales? How many people out there that are working, that are young, know why there's -20 and +4 and how they correlate, and why there's, I know how to explain that, but so I spend a lot of time with my younger people making sure that they get enough of my old school dad stuff to understand analog and how that correlates to digital levels and noise floor and things like that. I tell my son teaches an audio class at the University of Pitt for introduction to broadcast, and I join in with him a couple times a semester, and I tell everybody, get networking experience. I don't care what your goal is. You want to be on air, you want to be behind the scenes in radio, you want to be an engineer building, stacking racks and running cables. I'm telling you that if my career continues on and people ask me what the skill sets are, I'm telling you, you have to be able to use your tools. You have to understand Word and Excel, knowing Visio or CAD, all of that. But you need to understand that if I handed you a simple consumer router and said, listen, take the internet drop, put it into the WAN, set up a quick Wi-Fi network, 192.168 DHCP, grab the address, these kids need to know that. That is like the equivalent of 15 or 20 years ago saying, can you make an XLR connect?
Yeah.
That answers your question. That they have to be skilled both with their hands, and they have to know networking.
Well,
that's it.
Good news is SBE, and SBE teaches this stuff. Exactly what you said. They teach networking, they teach audio, digital audio, analog audio. So SBE could be a great resource for people looking. Right. Mitch, we got to take one more quick break. When we come back, sure, I'm going to be looking to you, Mitch, for a tip of the week, some gem of wisdom, and you've got 2 minutes to figure it out. 2 minutes to figure out a gem of wisdom for our audience. This Week in Radio Tech brought to you by our friends at Broadcasters General Store and Vox Pro.
Hey, what's happening? St. John here, coming to you from Command Central, and wanted to tell you about the absolute best partner you can have in radio. I'm talking about, boom, Wheatstone's Vox Pro. Now, a lot of folks have used previous versions of Vox Pro, all awesome, but I want to tell you about some of my favorite new features in 7. And for folks who've never used Vox Pro before, I'm about to tell you why it's an absolute game changer and essential for really fast-paced multi-element radio. Lots of different audio software out there. Why Vox Pro? Because it was designed for radio. It's the only software designed to do what we needed to do, which is record, edit, playback in real time. When I say lightning fast, I'm going to show you how fast you can edit stuff up in Vox Pro right now. So literally 3 clicks on the controller, mark left, mark right, everything that gets marked, you hit delete, it goes away. It's literally that fast. So we're going to take this part right here. Boom. From caller 9 to him saying, I'm ready. 5, ready for that secret sound. Boom. All of that stuff, hit delete, it goes away. Here's your edit. You are tackling secret sound, caller 9. I'm ready, St. John. One of the best features of version 7, this is awesome. It's effects macros, and you can literally put a chain of effects together so that instead of having to normalize a phone bit and then use noise reduction on it and EQ it and all that, you can literally build a chain. One button, this one's called call right here. I just click that. All of those processes happen instantaneously. Literally saves 80% of your editing and cleanup time. Final thing that I love about Vox Pro, and there's so much more to get into, but one of my favorite things, you can load it on a laptop. I've literally done my show from a hotel room in Armenia to the conference room at, this was fun, jury duty. Great thing, no one could tell the difference. Vox Pro makes it totally easy. Telling you, if you're looking for the best on-air partner, call my friends at Wheatstone, ask them about Vox Pro, and you will be glad you did.
And actually, you can buy Vox Pro from Broadcasters General Store. Website, bgs.cc. That's the website, bgs.cc. Or call them because they love to talk on the phone at 352-622-7700. Thank you so much, Broadcasters General Store and Vox Pro, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. I'm Kirk Harnack, and about to finish things up. Mitch Glider is our guest. He's the engineering supervisor at CBS Radio Networks in New York City. Mitch, going to try to get some gem of wisdom out of you today. What you got?
I would say that for anybody, any engineer that wants to enter this business, whether it's on a local level or a network level, and it doesn't really matter where you start, is the term would be, respect the past, embrace the future. Meaning there has to be a blend of you learning some elements of what used to be and how things were done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But then you have to be able to take that and reference it to what you're doing in the future with streaming and SRT and internet delivery and understanding transmission and stuff like that. So, that was one of the things I had to teach Jack and Sarah was they had to put up with my history lesson of how we used to do things and what technology replaced that, and then therefore what skill sets I expect them to have. And any future person, again, a lot has to do with IT, to enable them to operate and troubleshoot and forward think, right, to the future. So that is my tip for past and future radio engineers, local and network.
That is brilliant. I love that phrase, respect the past, embrace the future. And yes, of course, that applies to a lot of things, but to our business and what you do, what so many engineers do, that's very apropos. Thank you for that absolute gem. I appreciate it. Well, Mitch, listen,
I
safe
just want to say one thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know I talk too much, but that whole -20 to +4 thing.
Yeah.
Let everybody think about that. That alone encapsulates the past and the future. But I'm sorry, I interrupted your lockout.
It sure is. Well, as someone involved with digital audio and coding digital audio, like what you're doing, and what a lot of broadcasters do, especially for streaming, I do like to use almost every bit available. I hate, it's like I've been a pilot. What's useless is runway behind you and sky above you. That's useless to a pilot. And 20 dB of unused bits to me is a little bit useless. So I like to push it a little bit too.
Well, that's
just like the price.
We run a hot network, and I think you'd enjoy us.
Just like the Price is Right, as close as you can, but don't go over. Hey, Mitch Glider has been my guest on This Week in Radio Tech, CBS Radio Network Engineering Supervisor. We got to go. I really appreciate Suncast doing a technical direction, producing another episode of TWiRT, and we'll be back next week. Next week, I'll be coming to you from Hawaii, from Maui. We're going to finish up moving 8 satellite receivers, some of them CBS Radio Network from Skyview. We'll be moving those and a satellite dish and using a crane and all that. So it's going to be exciting. This is a very apropos episode. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.